Well, hello, everybody. So happy to be here with you today. We always start whatever we present with a centering exercise so that we can be more present and more aligned with our intention. So today, I'm going to ask you please to close your eyes and just fall into the center of your being, wherever that is for you, like a stone falling from the surface of a lake down to the bottom sands, gently bouncing there before resting. And also rest the mind. We think a lot of resting the body, but we can also, through intention, rest the mind. And I'm going to make a sound and just follow the sound to the end of it. Welcome then to this workshop, this nonviolence training from spirit to street. We're so happy you're all here. We feel so privileged to be able to share with you what is so essential at this moment in history and at this particular time in the United States and elsewhere. So we will introduce ourselves and then start with the foundations. And then we will go to inner work and then end with in the street. So this training is divided into 3 sections: foundations, inner work, and in the street. So Adam, would you like to start introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you, Veronica. My name is Adam Vogal, and I am the president of the Oregon Peace Institute. I'm also the coordinator of the Portland Peace Team here in Portland, Oregon. And I also own the Peace Professionals LLC, which is a company that teaches our community de-escalation and bystander intervention skills. And I'm very happy to be here with you today with all of you to experience this together and grow and learn. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Adam. And would you like to invite either Rivera or myself to introduce ourselves?
Yes, Rivera, would you share a bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks, Adam. Thanks, Veronica. So I'm Rivera Sun. I'm an author and an activist. I write nonviolence novels, let's say, and I edit Nonviolence News, which collects and circulates 30 to 50 stories of nonviolence in action each week. But I'm also a Bene trainer, and I've worked with Campaign Nonviolence in the past. And it is very exciting to see how this movement is growing, to be part of the national conference this year, and to be able to offer this webinar with my co-presenters and have the support of so many wonderful Campaign Nonviolence Bene staff members on this webinar as well. Thank you. Veronica, why don't you tell them a little bit more about your wonderful self?
Okay, so my accent comes from the fact that I grew up in Argentina. And I've been with Bene for 21 years now, and it's been a ride. Wonderful, wonderful, and challenging at times. And I'm the director of trainings, and I've taught in so many parts of the world, really, these processes that we're going to share today in most countries in South America, Australia, Europe, Canada. I live in Canada, by the way, in Montreal. And anyway, I'm just so happy that this is happening with so many people. We've had 471 registrations for this course. And yes, may the spirit of nonviolence blossom and come to fruition. This is my wish. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about the two hands of nonviolence. The two hands of nonviolence is pivotal to understanding what nonviolence really expresses, what it does for us and for others. So the two hands of nonviolence is like this. With one hand, we say to one who is angry, or to an oppressor, or to an unjust system, stop what you're doing. I refuse to honor the role you're choosing to play. I refuse to obey you. I refuse to cooperate with your demands. I refuse to build the walls and the bombs. I refuse to pay for the guns. With this hand, I will even interfere with the wrong that you're doing. I want to disrupt the easy patterns of your life. But then the advocate of nonviolence raises the other hand. It is raised outstretched, maybe with love and sympathy, maybe not, but always outstretched. With this hand, we say, I won't let go of you or cast you out of the human race. I have faith that you can make a better choice than you're making now, and I'll be there when you're ready. Like it or not, we are part of one another. So what I'm going to invite you all to do, I'm going to guide you, but I'm inviting you all I'm going to guide you in working with both hands, but the invitation is to feel every single micro gesture, if possible, of what happens inside of you when you raise one hand and when you extend the other. What happens, what deconstructs or constructs, what happens in your heart, what happens in your belly, what happens in your head. So what kind of modification of the structure of who you are occurs? That's the invitation. So raise one of the hands in the sign of stop. Raise it slowly. We have time to do this, no hurry. You just raise one hand. And this is actually a mindfulness practice, like see what happens when you raise this hand in your heart, in your brain, in your whole history, actually. What happens when you raise this hand? What implications does it have for the world, for your relationship to yourself, for your relationship to others, for your relationship to the world? Just feel all of that. And now extend the other hand, as we were saying, as Rivera is showing, extend the other hand. Right. And what happens in your heart?
I'm just going to lift my hands up high so you can see for a moment. The two hands. Veronica, lift your hand up a little higher on the lower end. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
What happens now that you have raised the other hand? What happens in raising the other hand? What happens in raising the other hand? And what happens with the combination of the two hands? What's going on? What kind of revolution inside are you experiencing right now, right here and now? It's powerful, isn't it? It's really powerful. Like, I have taught this all around the world, and I have gone, for example, after a few years, I've gone again to Colombia or to Venezuela, and they will forget everything. But they receive me at the airport with the 2 hands of nonviolence, so that they won't forget, you know, because it is actually a symbol, and it occupies a very large space in the brain, the hands do. And this was created by Barbara Deming. She was an activist, a wonderful, wonderful writer and activist and feminist. And Rivera, would you like to add something to what I've said so far?
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful invitation to see how it's feeling in ourselves, and what a revolution it is to think about these 2 hands and actions in our lives. That we have, I always like to think about how we have one hand that can oppose a problem and another hand that can propose a solution. One hand that can engage in the constructive work that Gandhi talked about in Constructive Program, and another hand that can engage in obstructive holding actions, as yet another teacher, Joanna Macy, references. That we have these hands together. And sometimes we notice that this hand, the hand that says no, it actually gets tired, right? Maybe you notice that while you're holding up your hands. But this hand, the hand that can say yes, the hand that constructs things, we're actually wired biologically as human beings to be able to sustain this kind of action for a very long time. So to be effective with nonviolence, we need to use both the no and the yes, the oppose and the propose, the hand that says stop your behavior, and the hand that says I am open to you as a human being, and I know that you are more than this behavior you're doing. It's an incredible thing, the 2 hands of nonviolence. Back to you, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Rivera. It is so significant at this moment in time, with everything that is happening in terms of your oppositions to different violences and to the destruction of the earth and racism and greed and poverty. It is so very important to put up these 2 hands of nonviolence, not to perpetuate the old story of an eye for an eye, but to really open our hearts when we do this other hand, to open our hearts to a new possibility, to a new story of humanity. So this is important. Would you like, Rivera, to talk about a little bit now about the 3 dimensions of nonviolence, and in terms of also this present moment that we're living?
Yes, so at Bene and in Campaign Nonviolence, which is a movement to build a culture of active nonviolence, free from war, poverty, racism, and the environmental destruction that we see all over the place, we think about nonviolence as occupying 3 dimensions, or expressing in 3 dimensions. One is toward ourselves. First of all, how many of us practice violence to ourselves? Take a moment. You're all anonymous, so you can just raise your hand right up right now. Just notice, have you ever felt like you're being violent towards yourself? Right? And what would it feel like in your life to practice nonviolence towards yourself with deep compassion and deep respect? Second of all is nonviolence towards all others, all other human beings, you know, not just the ones that you love, but the ones that maybe push your buttons, maybe annoy you, maybe threaten you, maybe scare you. Nonviolence towards all others in everything that we do in the world. This is it could take us a very long time, a lot of work in this, right? And then, of course, there is nonviolence towards the whole earth, the whole world. And this means that we need to work together with nonviolence, because one person alone could be incredibly nonviolent towards the earth, and many of us are. But if we are not all as humans nonviolent towards the whole world, the whole earth, then we aren't going to have a planet to live on. So nonviolence towards the self, nonviolence towards all others, and nonviolence towards the whole world and the whole earth. It's a tall order, but it's a worthy order. It's a worthy thing to try to do in your life. Veronica, do you want to add anything more specific, deep, broad, tall on that?
Yes, I would like to say that they're all interrelated. Of course, it's not a separate thing, but in my personal life, I notice that as I become more compassionate towards myself, without being indulgent, but really more compassionate towards myself and treating myself as if I was my dearest child, then that naturally, it's like a perfume that comes out of me, to put it in a certain way, and it extends to others. And therefore, this nonviolence, I want to express it onto others. And I see the effect of this, what we call mirror neurons. You know, as I am compassionate to another person feels it, because we feel everything. And then they are compassionate towards me. And then it becomes this snowball of, you know, and then obviously I want to live in a compassionate environment, a compassionate world. So I will do whatever is necessary to foster that well-being for all. So it's all interconnected, but it does start with us. It does start with us. And then it goes on from there.
Yes, and if I can just add something else in there, Veronica, one of the things that Bene does an amazing job of working with in groups all over the world, around the country, in the Campaign Nonviolence chapters, in the nonviolent cities, is we look at violence and nonviolence as more than just how we behave physically with one another. Nonviolence is much deeper and broader than simply not causing physical harm to another human being. As we know, when we talk about violence, we understand that it's more than just physical. It could be emotional, it could be psychological, it can be systemic, structural, it can be cultural. And when you look at the opposite, when you look at nonviolence, nonviolence can be personal, it can be inner work, it can be interpersonal, but it can also be, and here's where it gets very exciting, systemic, structural, cultural, all of these things. And to be tangible about that, systemic and structural nonviolence may look like putting social service officers on the street instead of armed cops. It may look like defunding fossil fuels and funding renewable resources for energy. It may look like making sure the curriculums that we teach in our schools are rooted in cultural nonviolence, that every person's culture feels like it belongs and is represented. This is where we start to transform systems and structures in our world from the very things that create increasing cycles of violence to increasing cycles of nonviolence. And the good news is that for every problem that you can think of, there is already a solution in the works, some of which have 20, 30, 40, 50, even hundreds of years of ancient practices. For example, restorative justice is a form of structural nonviolence in the justice system, rooted in principles of nonviolence. And it comes from indigenous cultures, and it is being brought forward by communities of color in the US specifically. And it is a system that directly intervenes in the violence of the mass incarceration system and gives us an alternative. So every time today that you hear Veronica or Adam or I say the word nonviolence, understand that in our minds, in our understanding of this word, we are including all of this immensity of the beauty and the power and the strength of nonviolence.
Thank you so much, Rivera. And we call this workshop, we call the workshop From Spirit to Street. And this is the spirit that will take us into the streets, as we will see in the rest of this workshop. And a reminder that, as Gandhi said, soul force is the force which is born of truth and love or nonviolence. So we're talking here about a transformation of consciousness. And though some of us might think that's too huge, that is immense, I can't do that. That's kind of like everything starts, every single revolution starts with an understanding in our minds that even when we say this is impossible, at that moment it becomes possible simply because we have visualized it. So this is the hope in this. And it's an extraordinary hope. Would you like to show us the pictures, Rivera?
Yes. So this whole theme of today is soul force, from spirit to street action. And we have to start with we have to get into that question of what is soul force? What is this incredible word? And for starters, it's one of the many, many words that Gandhi used as he was trying to explain to the world, what is this phenomenal thing called nonviolence? Where does it reside in our beings? How does it express into the world? He also used truth force and love force, and soul force was one of them. So rather than saying more of that, I'm going to lead you in an experiential exercise. And to do this, you need to get out a piece of paper and a pen, because I want you to take notes. And please do take notes, because it's going to be worth it. It's not going to be very tricky, but it's going to be very worth it. So I'm going to pull up a series of photos. Here we go. Just going to move into present mode. And when I show these photos, I'll tell you where they're from and what's going on a little bit, but I want you to take a moment and write down on your paper the qualities of being that you see embodied in the photos. These are things like love or courage or perseverance, qualities that we all have as humans and that you will see in these photos. And you'll all have different words for these things, but they're all valid answers. So here we go. This, of course, this is the guy, right? This is Gandhi. He's on the Salt March in 1930. So just take a moment and think of your word or words. What do you see these characters embodying as they embark on this historic march to the sea to engage in mass civil disobedience of the salt monopoly? And how about this lady here? What qualities does she embody? What do you see in the way that she's engaging nonviolence in the world right here? She is in South Korea during a massive massive strike that's going on against their attempts to reform pensions and defund the pension program. This is in 2015. What qualities of soul force is this young girl embodying? This is in Chile, in Santiago, in 2016, during a pro-democracy protest. What qualities do you see in this? For example, ferocity and vulnerability. Add to your list the qualities that this young woman might be embodying. This is Isha Evans in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a Black Lives Matter protest over the murder of Alton Sterling in 2016. What qualities do you see in her? What does this photo evoke in you? What do you notice about the human spirit in this photo? This is Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during a football game. Recently, the NFL just reversed its stance. At first, it banned these kind of protests, and Kaepernick lost his job. He got kicked out of the league. And after the mass protests that just happened, the NFL publicly apologized for its choices around that. What qualities does this photo bring up? All right, so you think you know this guy, but really I want to direct your attention to the man standing right beside him. This is Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. And he looks like just a simply very tall man in this photo. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of his story, and then I want you to think about what qualities of soul force he embodied. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan is a Muslim man. He's a Pashtun, and he was a contemporary of Gandhi, a friend. And he did something no one else in the entire world, even Gandhi, has ever done. He organized a 100,000 person peace and nonviolence army. Disciplined, trained, prepared to withstand the worst of the British repression during the Indian self-rule movement. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan is his name, and many of us have never heard of him, but he is a tremendous figure of nonviolence. So what qualities of soul force does he bring up? Write down a note on your paper. In this photo, I want you to notice, of course, we see right away these two beautiful women sharing a loving kiss. But I want you to look beyond them to the crowd behind them. Look at those open mouths, those shocked expressions, maybe even a little anger. What's going on here is this is an anti-gay marriage rally in France in 2012. And in spite of the fact that they're outnumbered, in spite of the fact that everyone else is demonstrating against their love, these two women decide to engage in an act of love, to use soul force in that way to counter the hate that was on display. What kind of soul force are they embodying? Notice what's going on in these photos. Jot down some words about what these scenes evoke. What qualities is this woman embodying? This is a photo from 1967 during the Boston Marathon. And this woman, Catherine Switzer, is the first woman to run in the Boston Marathon. And as she's running, not only was it hard to run a marathon, but all these men in the marathon tried to pull her off the route, take away her number, pull off her sweatshirt because they didn't want her to be in that race. What kind of qualities is she embodying? Just a couple more. Take in this photo. Write that down. What do you see this amazing woman embodying? This is Maria Teresa Tess Asplund in Sweden, and these are three members of the far right. We might call them neo-Nazis. They are certainly racist in their views, and she is putting up her fist defiantly to them. This is in 2015. Write down the qualities that you see embodied by her. This is a very famous photo of Tiananmen Square in 1989. This man is known as Tank Man, and we don't actually know what happened to him. His story is a bit of a mystery. but we think he might be alive, but we are not sure. What qualities does this man embody? And here you go, last photo. Take this photo in. What qualities do you see in this photo? How might we describe the human characters that are coming through in this woman? This photo is in Istanbul, Turkey in 2014 during the Gezi Park uprising. So I'm going to stop the share. And I want to just invite you to read back to yourself, maybe even read it aloud wherever you're sitting right now, the list of qualities that you just wrote down. All of these soul force qualities. Adam or Veronica, would you like to share any qualities that you noticed?
Definitely. Well, strength, determination, transparency, transcendence, transpersonal. Like, I could go on and on. And because all of these qualities require from us to take a leap in faith, to trust ourselves, to trust our power, because we have more power than we think, and ultimately faith in humanity.
Veronica, for me, I felt very much the same. I was very impressed with their willingness to become a part of something that could change the dynamics of a situation that could be quite destructive for some of them, and their willingness to step up in spite of that and say, I want to create change. I want something different than what's being handed out here, or I want to create positive change in my community for others, not just for themselves, but stepping up for all of those that were around them. In many of the pictures, they're one individual representing the power of the many. And it's a beautiful, beautiful expression.
Yeah, so just notice how much was in those photos from around the world. Oftentimes, and this is a question that came in the chat box, people like Gandhi kind of take the center stage, or Dr. King overshadows the tremendous contributions of many other people in the civil rights movement. And as practitioners of nonviolence, it's actually our job to decenter the people we always talk about and start to enliven our understanding of who are the people who do nonviolence, who are the people who make change in the world, who step up and embody soul force. And there are so many that we could name. The hardest part of collecting these soul force images was actually keeping it down to a reasonable number, so we weren't here for 3 hours just looking at photos. But please do notice how that people of all genders practice nonviolence and embody soul force, people of all sexualities, people of all races, people of all creeds even, people of all faiths have brought forward nonviolence in incredibly powerful ways in our world. Now, when we talk about soul force, love force, truth force, nonviolence, this is not something that any of us hold to ourselves, but it is something that we all step into a global lineage of and are honored to be a part of. So thank you. Any thoughts or reflections from Veronica? And Adam, can you turn up your volume, the gain on your microphone? People are having some trouble hearing you, and you've got great things to share.
Absolutely. I'll fix that. Thank you.
I just want to say, as I watch these photos over and over again, I find this incredible joy, like a song in the middle of my chest, because this is what we're walking towards, each one of us. at one point or another. And it is the song to the rehumanization of what has been dehumanized. And I think that one of the outstanding features of nonviolence is that it rehumanizes what has been dehumanized. Yeah, that seems important at this moment to underline, because we are in the grips of violence, not because we are bad people, but because we have not seen another possibility. And then we are dehumanized and we dehumanize ourselves. But this is a totally different expression of what it means to be human. And that's extraordinary. That in itself is extraordinary. And how extraordinary for our children that they can see this and say, yes, that's what I want for my future. That's what I want for my life. Not the violent, the redemptive violence version handed down through the centuries. I'm going to tell you a story. And I will credit for kind of giving it format to Ken Buddigan, who's been with Bene for 31 years. Wow. Anyway, so this story is called The Love Walks. And it is a story of the incredible power of soul force. It happened in the 1990s in East Los Angeles. And a group of women who were members of the Dolores Mission Catholic Church were searching for a solution to the violence that was taking a heavy toll in their neighborhood. 8 gangs were very active in the parish, killing and injuring and bringing so much fear and devastation in the whole neighborhood, almost on a daily basis. And so these women were meeting in their church to read the Gospels. And they were reading this particular passage in Matthew 14, 22, 33, where Jesus walks on water and he invites Peter to do the same. And it's in the middle of a storm in Galilee. And at first Peter says, yes, kind of, I will come. He got out of the boat and walks towards Jesus. But then the wind was very strong and he became very frightened and he began to sink. So he says, Lord, save me. And Jesus stretches out his hand and catches him and says, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And then when they got into the boat, the wind died down. So these women were reading this passage, and then they begin to talk about the fact that the storm on the Sea of Galilee was like the gang warfare in the streets of Boyle Heights. And that they were in this fragile boat, and how were they going to really survive? But like those in the boat, they were not sure that this was really making them very secure. Then this one woman says, I know what this is all about. We have to get out of the boat. That's what we have to do. We have to get out of the boat. Come on, let's get out of the boat. Leave the illusion of security behind. Let's go into the dangerous streets with the gangs and walk on the water, enter the violence-saturated streets, and then we will calm the storms together. This woman who had this vision, who had this inspiration, explained that they had to go and befriend the gangs. And after a long discussion, because the woman said, wow, are you crazy? I'm not going to go there at night. I mean, besides, I got a job during the day. I got to take care of my kids, etc., etc. But after a lot of kind of like discussion, 70 of them, and a few men, began a peregrinación, a pilgrimage or a procession. And they went from one gang turf to the next throughout the barrio. They offered the people chips, salsa, soda, songs from Michoacán and Jalisco and Chiapas, And throughout the night, in 8 war zones, the conflict abated, bafflingly, incredibly, the conflict abated. And the gang members themselves were very disoriented. There was a dramatic drop in the gang-related violence. And that's how they formed the Comité Pro Paz en el Barrio, which means Committee for Peace in the Neighborhood. And they broke the rules of war. And they called their work the Love Walks. And they went from entering the zones of danger to really listening to these people, befriending them, seeing them as human beings, rehumanizing them, and going from paralyzing fear and anger to see the human face of each one of the gang members, unleashing a process of communication and transformation. And people began to tell their hard stories growing up and the abuse and the violence, and how their only possibility of finding community was through these gangs. And so, but now that these women came and mingled with them, this was being changed. Their hearts were being changed, actually. And it didn't stop at the psychological level. They developed a tortilla factory, a bakery, a child cure center. The whole thing, as we said before, went from the personal to interpersonal to the social. And so the opportunity to acquire jobs also opened up. And this story is so much a story for our times and for the possibilities, and obviously about Soul Force. They trained a group to monitor and report abusive police behavior. And they developed and redefined the relationship between Los Angeles Police Department and the barrio. And this is a true story. This is a true story. Obviously, you know, it wasn't utopia. Things didn't transform immediately. They had to do a lot of conflict transformation and stuff like that. But the whole point in this story, which is an incredible story of hope and soul force and strength, is that transformation is possible if we just take that one leap where we trust ourselves and we trust the other, and that there is something greater than this moment where we are caught in fear and in hopelessness and helplessness. It is a leap into another dimension, into what Michael Nagler and others have called the new story. It's Thomas Berry started with the coin, the phrase, the new story, leaving the old story of an eye for an eye behind and seeing a different possibility. And therefore, as we expand ourselves into a new consciousness, that begins to have a repercussion in the environment around us. And that's the gist of the story, is how actually, like, we take it, it begins with us, and then we take it, and step by step, it expands and ultimately transforms everything. So I'd like to kind of like ask you for a moment to just close your eyes again. Close your eyes and remember that when I made the opening, when I went through the opening, I talked about falling like a stone to the center of ourselves. And try to do that again and locate that place in you that is stronger than whatever is happening to you physically, that is stronger than whatever is happening to you emotionally, that is stronger than the anxiety in your mind. It is actually a place that can be located in the body and that then expands. We call it heart, maybe. It's a question of heart, of opening, of being, We talk so much of being, so what does that mean? You know, there is a spiritual teacher that just works a lot with these 4 words: heart, open, wake, heart, open, wake, and be. I will repeat the words again: heart, open, wake, and be. There you can find your soul force. In these 4 words, all of a sudden there is this sense of, wow, I am so much more than this small, fearful, anxious, little, capsulated person. Because we are so much more than all of that. And this is what these women discovered. So I'm going to say the words, very important: heart, open, wake, and be. Thank you. Thank you. Rivera, back to you.
So all day today, just as Veronica's story so powerfully embodied, we're going to be exploring together that journey from the inner to the outer, from the spirit to the street, because one without the other, to me, doesn't quite embody what Gandhi was trying to get us to think about with the words soul force, or truth force, or love force. That it can be very common to think, oh, we got to work out all our inner stuff before we try to make outer change. Or conversely, some other people are like, let's go change the whole world. And they find themselves ungrounded in the work and reeling in the whirlwind that a campaign can be. So what we're trying to explore today with you is how to integrate these things so that we can be powerful, effective practitioners of nonviolence to transform ourselves, each other, and why not the whole world? Because we know there's a lot of shift from violence to nonviolence that could go on. I would like, before we do our next exercise, I'd love to share some of the questions that have come up, just in brief. And, you know, some of you already know where the Q&A box is, but if you don't, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. That is where you can send us questions. Now, just a little warning, there are 349 amazing people out there listening to this call. First of all, thank you so much. Second of all, take that in. Think about what it means to be talking about nonviolence in this depth with 349 people on the call today and over 100 more registered and we'll be listening to the recording afterwards. Imagine that. And while you're imagining that, please remember that you could easily inundate our Q&A box to the point where we could never answer any of the questions. So use it with care and with great love. But if it is possible, we will try to respond to some of the questions. So I just want to ask, one person asked, what did I mean when I said decenter? Do I mean decentering the other, decentering oneself? What I meant in that situation is that we often tell the same stories of nonviolence over and over again with the same central character. And when we dig a little bit and we look for what else is going on, we find there are thousands of campaigns all over the world, and every single one of those probably has 100 to 1,000 to even 1,000,000 amazing people doing this work. And so when we start to tell those stories, we start to see that the heroes we build up in our mind are just a small fraction of the incredible people that could be inspiring us. So thank you for that question. There's another question that came in about the third picture, and someone saw anger in it. And do we consider anger part of nonviolent activism? Veronica, I was wondering if you would like to take a response to that. Is anger part of nonviolent activism?
Well, yes, because the point is, anger will arise. I mean, we cannot control it, so that we can work with it, we can transform it, and that is absolutely the invitation. As Gandhi said, Gandhi had a lot of anger. I think that caring people have to confront a lot of anger at all the injustices. Like, I get so angry so much, you know, at all the injustices and everything that's happening. And how I work personally, I'm going to take it at a personal level. How I work with my anger, I feel it. I totally feel it. And then I work with the actual energy of it. I take away the story around the anger. And I work with the energy of it to fuel my nonviolence and my intention to transform myself for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so, you know, like I work with that. It's a precious energy. It's a wonderful energy. It's telling me something important about myself and about the world situation. But if I act on it, or I repress it, or I suppress it, if I repress it or suppress it or sublimate it, it will come out somewhere else. You know, like I will kind of go into depression or do something like that. So it is very, very important just to stay with incredible energy and then work with it in a way that is beneficial. Like Gandhi actually used to say it too, I think. He said that his anger was his motor that propulsed him to work for justice and peace and social transformation.
Thank you, Veronica. There's another question that has come in that is actually quite a number of questions about the two hands of nonviolence, and it's a little bit more than we can explore today on this call. But I do encourage you to look up Barbara Deming's Two Hands of Nonviolence, or please look up the Engaging Nonviolence Handbook, which is a wonderful exercise in there around it. And I can try to paraphrase some of those questions, but it's really very deep and nuanced. So, Veronica, I was wondering if there was a few words you might say about why is the stop hand of nonviolence so important in our world in balance with being open? What happens if we are only just open, only just receptive, only just want to work with people? Why do we need that stop hand?
We need to stop hand because we need to say no. But to use Naomi Klein's phrase, no is not enough. You got to also say yes. So you're saying no with this hand and you're saying yes with this one, right? Yes to a different possibility, a different dynamic, a different story. You know, so you say no to the injustice with this hand. You also take a stand. When you put this hand up, you're also taking a stand in yourself. You're not like wishy-washy. It's like Martin Luther King said it so clearly. He said the most painful thing is not what the people so-called evil do, but the indifference of the good, the indifference of the good people. So this is, I am not going to be indifferent. I'm going to take a stand, but I will open my heart. I will be open. I will be awake. I will do all of those things with this other hand, but I have to take a stand. This is the hand that actually Martin Luther King, both hands he used a lot, but when he stood up, when the people in Selma stood up, when the people in Montgomery, when they, you know, the bus boycott, they put up this hand for sure. Enough, no more, enough.
Thank you so much, Veronica. One person asked, do we have access to the slides afterwards? It will be in the recording when it is shared, and you will get a link to the recording. Another person asked about, can nonviolence be taken as hidden resistance? I mean, many of the pictures depict, you know, resistance in terms of street protests. Yeah, those are really great. Those are really easy to photograph. And so it makes it really easy to share those photographs in a seminar, right, like this, right? But that's just some of the 300 methods of nonviolent struggle alone, plus the hundreds of nonviolent practices, plus the hundreds of systemic and structural kinds of nonviolences. And all of those also have people embodying soul force in them. There is a question here, and this is probably the last question for now. We'll have other moments throughout today to share questions. where someone is asking about, sometimes it's hard to deal with nonviolence when there's a surprise attack, or an unexpected source is the one kind of bringing up the conflict. And any suggestions for how to remain rooted when something like that happens? And I think, Adam, you're probably going to talk about some of those practices a little later on. Is there any short thing you might mention now?
I would say practice. And we're going to be going over some things to practice so that when people are actually, when things seem like they're coming out of nowhere, you actually have a pre-practiced plan on how to deal with those, so that it's not something that you have to determine right there in the moment. You already know how to calm yourself and work through that situation because you've practiced it. And we're going to be discussing that here in the next section.
Great, thank you. All right, so speaking of practice, we are about to have a chance to practice nonviolence towards ourselves. One word that keeps coming up nowadays is Zoom fatigue, and this is a long time together, so we're gonna take a break, but you have a special challenge on your break. I want you to take out that list of soul force qualities. Okay, soul force qualities. And I want you to look at them. Maybe read them aloud to yourself wherever you're sitting. But as you read them aloud, I want you to feel like they are falling into you, like maybe a light filling you up, maybe water swelling through you, whatever the metaphor is that works for you. Imagine that when you say the word courage to yourself, it's not just a word on the tip of your tongue, it's something that resonates out and fills your whole being. Courage and love, strength, fortitude, perseverance, maybe humor, persistence, creativity, peace. Feel these words filling up your whole being, awakening the soul force that is inherent in you. And then, don't let it go anywhere, keep it. When you get up to take this little break, when you go to get a glass of water, go to use the restroom, take a stretch, I want you to keep these qualities alive in you. This is called a soul force walk, and it may be 10 steps to the kitchen, but keep your soul force alive in you. And notice what feels different in you as you do even the simplest of things. We will take 5 minutes and then we will be back. Thank you very much.
Can I ask something?
We are still being heard, but you can ask it.
Yes. I just want to, if there's anything that you want to say to me, you've got to put it on a paper that I can really see. I can't see in pencil. It's got to be, yeah. Can we be heard still, or are people doing their soul walk? Okay. You're on? Are we on? Restarting. Okay, great. So I guess you did your little soul force exercise, and I can bet so many of you have had a very unique experience. And my invitation to you would be to keep repeating that little exercise for 21 days, once a day or twice a day. Just do this little thing that you just did now. Remember very well the feeling that you had as you did this. If something solidified, did something just go, wow, I do have this in me? Did something just surprise you in any other way? This opening heart, wake and be, did it become a reality for you as you did this little exercise of embodying your own soul force? Obviously, for anything to become a part of us, we need to practice it. So really, I'm serious about this invitation. Practice it for the next 21 days and see what happens. So that's invitation. Rivera, anything you would like to add to that?
No, I'm just grateful to be here with everyone. I'm grateful for your time spent working on this material together.
Me too. I am so grateful that also to be working with Adam and you. It's such an incredible privilege. So I'm going to tell you another story. And this actually is one of my favorite stories, and for various reasons. But so this is, we call it the story of Karen Ridd. So the year now is 1989, and Karen and 4 other international volunteers were working with a group called Peace Brigades International, or PBI, when they were suddenly arrested by the Salvadorian military. The 3 Spaniards managed to be deported from El Salvador, but Karen and Marcela from Colombia, the other 2 people, were taken by the Salvadorian military. Nobody had been arrested before. This is Peace Brigades International has an incredible, you know, they do accompaniment and has an incredible record of people kind of like not coming to harm. So they were taken to the barracks, to some kind of barracks way down in the forest, and they were called terrorists from the Episcopal Church. And so Karen, because being Canadian and everything else, she could activate her contacts in the Canadian embassy in El Salvador, in the city of El Salvador, but the Colombian embassy could not be reached. So Karen, she contacts this guy at the Canadian embassy in El Salvador, and they come to pick her up. And as she's about leaving the barracks to safety with this person who came to pick her up, she turns around and she sees that Marcela is against a wall and she is being kind of like really abused. She says she was the perfect image of dehumanization. And glad as Karen was to be alive, something tugged at her. She felt terrible. So she left the confused man from the Canadian embassy and walked back into the barracks. And so the men got even more violent towards Marcela and said, now you'll see how we treat you, you know, you spies. But one soldier got very curious and asked Karen, why had she done that? Why had she gone back in? And so Karen, who had a lot of nonviolence training, she said, you know how it is. One does not abandon a compañero. And so the soldier said, okay, take her away, go with her. So they walked out into the night, both free. It's a very powerful story because actually one word, compañero, changed everything and saved the consciousness of everybody, of the soldier, the life of Marcela, the consciousness of Karen, and the probably relationships between Colombia and El Salvador. Just one word, compañero. And of course, what she did by uttering that one word, compañero, is she created a bridge where the soldier became human. And again, it's this thing that we were talking about. You transform yourself, and then the other is transformed too. And then the whole situation becomes transformed. It was very interesting because I want to tell you this little story important. I was working in Colombia, and all of a sudden, I was talking to this man with whom we were flying from one place of Colombia to the other because it was too dangerous to do it on land. And I talked about the story, and he said, "Oh yeah, Marcela is my girlfriend." So something like that. He knew Marcela and the combinations. And then the other piece of the story that it really is very important in the power of transformation, because this one story that I'm telling you now transformed everybody then, but it's probably transforming some of you now. And then you will tell that story and it's going to transform other people, because this is the way this works. It's a snowball. But I was in Bangalore in the south of India, and I was teaching these kinds of things in a school, in a Krishnamurti school in Bangalore. And these were nine-year-old kids, and they were all sitting in the floor the way we do in India. And I tell this story to these children. There must have been about 20 children. And there was one boy with very, very huge eyes. And he all of a sudden blurts out when he hears this story. So I've just understood something. And I said, what did you understand? And he said, well, they send us out to kill, but they do not tell us that that's what they're going to do. They tell us something else. They lie to us. And it was a total revelation for this little kid. And afterwards, the teacher came to me and says, you know, this was extraordinary what happened to this little boy, because he's from a very wealthy family. So he brings all these kind of expensive violent videos to the school and stuff like that. And I said, well, let's keep in touch and see if this really has made a change, a profound change in the boy. So we kept in touch. And 2 months later, the teacher said, the boy has profoundly changed from this story. And his insight, he had an insight. You know, they don't tell us that we're going to be killed or we're going to kill. This is the whole thing. And all of a sudden he understood. So again, we are faced here with the possibility. It's so there, it's almost we can touch it, this possibility of transformation. And what does it take to really, really embrace the change? That is a question for each one of us. What does it take to embrace the change? Yes. So we go to self-regulation.
Yes.
Adam. I would like to answer that question. Can I answer that question?
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you transform the anger into compassion? I didn't say this, but I am a Buddhist practitioner for 30 years. I do Zen practice. And, you know, this is what I live with all the time. This kind of like, how do I transform? And the way to transform actually is to stay. It's actually to stay with what is going on, not escape it, not, you know, not kind of like deny it, but actually to stay and embrace it. And nothing lasts. Everything is constantly in a process of change. So eventually, as you work with your anger and you have compassion towards yourself and to that anger, which probably has a reason to be there, it slowly begins to morph and transform into something else. And just sometimes I embrace my emotions with such tenderness and such intensity that I actually cry from just the act of this embracing. And then it slowly transforms into compassion. And then I feel compassion for all those that are angry like I am angry. And there's something extraordinary that begins to open. It's like an expansion. And my heart softens. And that's what I do, you know. That's what I do.
Thank you for that, Veronica. And what I'm going to be talking to you about right now is doing exactly that, being aware that your feelings of anger or distress or whatever it is you're going through that's escalating in you, finding ways within yourself to be able to calm and center yourself and to regulate how you're going to respond, so that you're not reacting to the things that are coming into your life. You're using the soul force to respond in ways that can be more effective for you. We have in our being, we have reactions, and typically this is happening when somebody is being aggressive towards us or around us, or we're seeing injustice in the world. And our body has a natural response to that, and it's called fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we don't get a choice in that. What happens is our frontal lobe, actually, that's where our executive function is. That's where we make executive choices from. That actually shuts down because our body decides we are in danger or danger is nearby, and our body wants to do something. And that response can be increasing our breaths so that we're getting more oxygen in so we can run away, or our body might tense up and our fists might come up so that we're gonna fight. Or it might be that our natural body's response is to just stop and not do anything. And that puts us in a position where we can't be effective. So what we need to be doing is practicing ways to overcome our body's natural reaction. It's gonna happen. We know it's gonna happen. And I'm sure if I were to ask everybody to raise their hands, who here has ever been angry and had something happen and had something happen near them and their body just responded. Either they felt like they had to run or they felt like they were gonna fight. Something happened to you and it wasn't even in your willingness to be party to what's going on with your own body. And so what we need to do is we need to have ways to counteract our body's natural response. And as I was talking about earlier, we do that through practice. And we can't be in positions all the time where we're actually in danger. But our body has these mirror neurons, which we talked about earlier, that whatever we're watching or witnessing or seeing in front of us, our body is going to respond to that naturally. So we need to be utilizing things from everyday life that can help us practice these responses so that we are actually responding when we're feeling anxiety, when we're feeling anger, when we're feeling ourselves maybe feeling out of control. We need to be able to practice ways to counter that. And the best way to do that, to do these practices, and there's lots of ways, and I'm hoping everybody can think of a way that they can practice this. One way is, I know a lot of people drive vehicles, and I don't know if anybody's ever been cut off or anybody has had a situation where, you know, maybe somebody came up on you really fast from behind while you were going the speed limit, and your body had a natural reaction or response to that. And so recognizing that, we need to have tools that we can utilize that we can de-escalate ourselves in those situations. And I'm going to share one of those tools with you right now. I'm going to share my screen. There's lots of ways to calm our natural reactions down, but one of the best ways is through breathing. It's through taking a deep breath, and I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. It's called square breathing. And so what we're going to do, let me move on to the next slide here. Okay, so this is a fight, flight, or freeze that I was talking about earlier, and how your brain responds to that. Your limbic system takes over, and that's where all of your deepest emotions come from. Okay, so right here, what we're gonna do, and I'm hoping you'll all practice this with me, is we are actually going to, it's called square breathing. We're gonna inhale for 4 seconds. We're gonna hold it for 4 seconds. We're gonna exhale nice and slow for 6 seconds, and then we're gonna hold for 2 seconds on the exhale, and then start the process again. And we're just gonna do this one time just to practice it, and it allows us, and I want you to recognize and feel what's going on with your body as you do this, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and start now, and go ahead and inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Exhale for 6 seconds. Hold that for 2 seconds. Okay. So if you recognize what's going on in your body while you're doing that, you're seeing that even though you're not anxious, or hopefully you're not anxious or upset, what I'm hoping that you noticed is even just being relaxed, that was further relaxation brought into your system. So when you are anxious, when things are going on that are outside of your control, utilizing your breath is an excellent way to tell your body, hey, I'm okay. Because what your body's natural response is when you're under duress, or you're stressed out or anxious, is your breathing gets really quick, because as I said, it's bringing in that oxygen to your body. But if you slow it down and you take purposeful breath, you're actually allowing your body to feel that you're okay. And you might not even be thinking, oh, I'm okay, but you're giving that sense to your body, and your body is then going to agree with you. Okay, I'm okay. And that puts you back to where you can think, where you're actually in your executive function, and then you get to decide how you're going to respond at that point. You're not going to have to be at the will of whatever your body wants to do, okay? And so there's another way. Not all of us can get to the calm and centered way and process through breathing. So there's actually another way to do that, and it's a wonderful way, and you can utilize it no matter where you are. It's a very quick process, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you again so you can see this slide. Okay. And this is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. And essentially what you're doing is, as you're escalated, you ask yourself the question, what are 5 things that I can see as you're looking around you? And then you're gonna name off those 5 things to yourself. Then you're gonna 4 things you can touch. And it might just be your feet on the ground. You can feel your toes touching your shoes. You can feel the air coming in at you from the wind. And 3 things you can hear. So it could be, maybe the person is yelling at you, you recognize that, or maybe you're hearing cars in the distance, could be anything. 2 things you can smell, and they use the example here of maybe cigarette smoke, or you could smell the freshly cut grass nearby. And then 1 thing you can taste in your mouth. And in the process of looking at all of these, or utilizing this process, what you're doing is you're actually asking yourself the questions. And it is in asking yourself these questions that you're being put really back into your executive mind, executive functions, so that you're able to calm and center yourself and be present for whatever else is going on. And we're actually going to be covering the process of how you're going to be utilizing the calming and centering as we go forward in this hour. Did Rivera or Veronica, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think those are great things to come to the moment and be able to create a gap where decision is possible and not just simple reaction. So the more you practice it, the more you will have the widening of that gap so that you can act and not react. That is very important, that gap. The more you practice, the more you can feel the gap, the wider the gap gets, and the more you can actually be in your power, be in what you want to be, not, you know, like a leaf in the wind that gets kind of like.
Right. Thank you, Veronica. Rivera?
Well, I'm just sitting here with my activist hat on and thinking about how these are actually practices that I use on the ground when protests go south, you know, when they get really uncertain, when the police do things that are intended to terrify and are terrifying, when my fellow activists might be losing their cool, let's say, when I might be losing my whatever, that these are actually things that can be used in a variety of situations. Some people asked in the Q&A about, you know, with a loved one versus a stranger. And for me, these are actually things I could use with my partner, all the way right into, you know, when I'm locking down to something.
Thank you, Rivera. And honestly, who better to practice with than your family or than those who are around you that you love and that you can recognize what's going on for you in that moment. And it could be a loved one that's activated your systems and made you feel like you need to reach out and you're angry, you want to deal with that. Those are the people that are going to be there for you. If you say to them, you know, I'm trying to change so that I'm less reactive and more responsive to you. And you say to them, I want to respond to you in ways that are better for us together. Will you help me practice that? When I get angry, will you help me get into a different state of mind? And talking about that beforehand, not waiting until the moment when you're actually angry and going into that situation where you're in fight or flight or angry. And you want to practice this beforehand so that you're not stuck to or stuck in the ways that you've dealt with whatever the conflicts have been in the past. Because every day we get to make a choice to change how we're going to deal with conflict. And we get that opportunity with family probably better than anybody else because we're with them. And especially now during COVID, quite a bit more probably. Mm-hmm. Veronica?
Yeah, so what I want to emphasize, because we live in a culture of instant gratification or instant results, you know, and the importance of being patient with ourselves because it's practice. And so what we do, we cannot do once, we will do eventually if we keep on practicing, if we are determined and steady. You know, this is not a thing that, you know, we have to decondition ourselves so much because we've been brought up to react, and instant gratification, pill, take the pill. You know, it's practice. It's practice.
So there are a number of questions coming in the chat box, and you can always tell when something is useful and valuable and interesting to people when they start to ask you to repeat things. And I want to ask you, Adam, to review a few things that you just said for people. One is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The other one is there's a question about fawn, which I think many of us know about fight, flight, and freeze, but fawn is newer. So maybe could you just explain what that one is and then review the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right, and the fawn is a response. There are people who, like, for example, at the sight of blood, their body will pass out and they will actually lose consciousness. And that's called fawning. It's also called abject surrender. Your body just says, you know what, no, I'm out. it turns itself off. But that's something that maybe over a long period of therapy and help, you could probably determine or change that. The other three, the fight, flight, or freeze, they're more easy to change and get back up into your executive function. So the fun isn't really something we can do anything about immediately. But we can also, but there are things that you can do to deal with that. And one of those is imagining the scenarios that would put you into that state. You know, if blood is, for example, if the sight of blood is going to make you pass out, bringing that into your existence a little at a time might be something that will help you get past that. But again, it's always good to maybe have a therapist or somebody to talk to about those issues if you are fainting around any traumatic experience. You definitely want to work through that before you get into those traumatic experiences. So somebody had asked about angriness being a natural reaction, and it is. And when we recognize the anger or ourselves becoming angry, it's telling us something. Our anger, like every emotion, is telling us that there's something about whatever the situation is, whatever's going on, that is making us feel other than we want to feel. Our baseline is happiness. We want to feel joy. We want to feel happiness. And when we feel anger, it's directing us that something in our sphere needs to change. And it's important that we understand that anger isn't terrible. It's not a bad thing. It's something that helps us. It helps us understand what we feel about a situation. Now, what we do with the anger is really what matters. If we're choosing to take that anger and punch out or do something that isn't for the betterment of yourself and those around you, if you're using your anger in negative ways, it's not good for anybody, of course. And again, how do we control that? Well, that natural angry reaction, we have to then look at that. Okay, I don't want to react to my anger anymore. I want to respond. I want to respond to the things that are going on for me, and I want to utilize my response to create good or to bring some sort of peace to the situation. Because that's what we get to do as nonviolent activists, as nonviolent practitioners. We get to actually bring our own peace into those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Just for time, I'm going to ask you to review the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then someone has asked about the square breathing. It's 4, 4, 6, 2. Why not 4, 4, 4? Is there a short answer to that, or is that like a long, we've got to talk to psychologists and spiritual thinkers type of answer?
Well, no, actually, that functions well for me, so that's what I use. But 4, 4, 4, 4 works. Whatever works for you, and you have to figure that out for yourself through practice. That's the short answer for that. And I will put this slide back up so that people can write that down.
And Adam, just while people are writing this down, I think it's important to mention to them that, you know, your background with the Portland Peace Team, I mean, many people don't necessarily realize this, but these are skills that you use when things are getting very intense in the street, when people are wanting to threaten violence, when there is a conflict that's escalating towards violence, when things are very unruly, when there is both alt-right and people who are resisting fascism in the street, plus maybe marginalized communities, that these are tools that you use on the ground in those situations.
Absolutely, all the time. The reality is the Portland Peace Team is out in the streets helping organizations and movements that are nonviolent, and we're there to provide nonviolent de-escalation services for those organizations. And we are dealing with groups that, you know, really don't agree with one another. And we get to be the intermediaries and the people who step into those situations. And what I'm talking to you about today at this section is the calming and centering piece of what we do as peacemakers, as peacekeepers, what we do to go into those situations and bring that sense of peace in, rather than bringing in our anxiety or our fear or whatever it is that's going on for us in that moment. We actually take the time to do these things that I'm suggesting for you all, taking that deep breath, so that when we step into those situations, we're actually stepping in as an agent of peace, and we're bringing our own peace in with us. I hope everybody got that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. Okay. So, yeah.
There's a lot of questions about FAWN. Could you, you know, is an acronym, how do you spell that? What does
it's like fawning, like fainting, I guess would be another word for it. You know, and I'm not absolutely positive why they say fawn. It's just the way that it's been presented.
I think it's from the animal fawn, like a baby deer. Like some animals have a response where, I mean, rabbits do this a lot too, where if they're very, very afraid, they just sort of like plump and fall over. And so that might be where that's coming from.
Right. And the goats do that too. They hear a loud noise and they'll just pop right over.
And apparently we do as well. So I'm going to share a story now. We're going to come back to some of these exercises that Adam has introduced and have a chance to practice them visually. But I'm going to share a story about why you might want to practice. Why, even if you think you have a very straightforward life, you never know what's going to come down the pipeline towards you. So I'm going to share my screen because even though I'm telling this story, I want you to see the face of the person who this story is about. In 2013, a young woman named Antoinette Tuff, and this is her on the left, she was a substitute administrative function at a public school in DeKalb County, Georgia. And she decided that she would fill in for a coworker of hers on this certain day. What she didn't know was that on the same day, a young man named Michael Brandon Hill, a young white man in his 20s, was going to walk into that elementary school with an assault rifle and 400 rounds of ammunition, with the intention of killing small children and then probably killing himself. So there was Antoinette Tuff, and the school went on lockdown. The police came outside and had already fired shots and had an exchange with the young man of shooting. And he walked into the room where she was, and she was terrified. She went into that fight, freeze, panic mode. But then she took a deep breath and she said the first thing that popped to her mind, and she asked him, and this is so insane, really, it's so out of the blue, can I go to the bathroom? She asked this shooter, can I go to the bathroom? But what it did was it broke through the typical roles of what she was supposed to do and what he was supposed to do. And he said yes. So she got to the door of this room and she was about to go out the door and get out of the building when she looked down the hall and she realized that if she left, this young man, Michael Brandon Hill, was going to walk into the hallway, go into a classroom and open fire. So instead of saving herself, she walked back into the room where Michael Brandon Hill was and said, as long as I can keep him talking to me, he won't be shooting children. So she just started to empathize with him. She said, we all go through tough times. We all have stuff that's going on. I've had a really hard year myself. I even contemplated suicide. I'm having trouble with my son. It's a really tough time. I understand how things can just look really bleak. And on the screen, you can see a little bit of the text from the 911 call. And I include this because I want you to see that I'm not just making this up. She really did say these things. And she ultimately got Michael Brandon Hill to put down his weapon. put down the rounds of ammunition and surrender himself peacefully to the cops. And this text is actually what she said at the very end there. It's gonna be all right, sweetie. I want you to know that I love you though, okay? And I'm proud of you, and it's a good thing that you're just giving up, and don't worry about it. We all go through something in life. Now you don't want that, you're gonna be okay. Antoinette Tuff is one of the few people that we know has successfully disarmed a school shooter. And she did it through practices we know about in nonviolence, things that we're talking about, things like what Adam just mentioned about taking a deep breath, thinking outside the box, getting around your fight, flight, and freeze response. She also had a spiritual practice. In fact, she had opened up the Bible that morning and read the passage, "Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil." And she had a practice of sitting quietly for 10 minutes a day, just sitting quietly. And she said later that this helped her get through this incredibly intense experience. Antoinette Tuff is one of the most amazing nonviolence stories I know, where she not only practiced nonviolence herself, but actually stopped extreme violence in its tracks. And I wanted to share that story with you as just an example of why we need to know these stories and why we need to practice, and why the things that Adam is sharing is not just for street actions, it's not just for peace team trainings, but it's also something that you should have in your back pocket no matter what, because you never know who's going to walk in that door of your workplace or your school, or who you're going to see on the street, or what's going to happen in the subway. And you can be prepared. You can train yourself to be ready to respond in a way that helps the situation de-escalate and take a turn towards nonviolence instead of towards violence. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand it back to Adam.
Thank you for that, Rivera. So this next little section that I'm going to be sharing with you, there's going to be some things that might make you feel uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is okay, but I really don't want you to feel unsafe as I share this. One of the slides is an actual real situation that happened on a train in New York, where a gentleman intervened on some people that were being violent, and the people that were being violent were a man and a woman. And so there is the chance that that might be very triggering for some people, and I really want to honor that for you. And I thought really hard whether this is something that I would want to share with a group of so many people, but I think that ultimately I decided that it's something to share because the lessons and the value of sharing it, I think, is much larger. While I also do want to honor the fact that this, I will let you know before I show it, so that if you want to look away and mute your system, you're able to do that if that's something that might trigger you. And then you can all come back in. It's the video is only about 1 minute and 10 seconds long, so you can come back in after, and then we're gonna have a short discussion about what happened in that video. And then there's also gonna be some other, a couple other slides that show angry people. And I just want everybody to be aware that that's coming so that we can practice actually those skills that we talked about earlier of calming and centering ourselves when we're witnessing things that might trigger us. We can practice the breathing, taking that deep breath. And this is also something that, another way that you can practice your calming and centering. When you're seeing stuff, you can watch videos. YouTube has tons of videos where people are actually getting in arguments or getting in fights, and you can utilize those to strengthen yourself, so that when those things are happening, you're not having that reaction. You can then choose to respond. And I want you to witness as you're seeing these things that I'm showing you. I really, really want you to pay attention to what's going on in your body. What is your body doing? What are you feeling? What emotions are coming up for you? And then also the thoughts that you're having about what's happening to your body. It's very important that you recognize your body's responses so that you're able to deal with that when it comes up. If you're out in the streets, dealing with situations that might come up, whether it be in a grocery store or it be in a bus. In fact, I was in the grocery store earlier today and watched a person come in without a mask and several people with masks, and I saw the confrontation, and I wasn't expecting that just going to get groceries. These things will come up for you in your daily lives, and knowing how to de-escalate is going to be a great thing for your community. So I do want to share this first screen, and I just really want you to pay attention what happens for you, what's going on for you, okay? Okay. So when we're talking and when we're looking at this, what's going on for you? What do you see? What are you recognizing? What are you noticing about your body? And in this one, this person's looking right at you. They're pointing at you. They're angry with you specifically. What's going on for you in this? Okay, here's the next one. These are two people that are angry with each other. You're just witnessing it. You're not a part of it in that you're not directly involved, but you're seeing this. How does that make you feel? What's going on for you? What are your thoughts about the way you're feeling? What's happening? Okay. So this is the video that I talked about earlier when we started this section. And again, it can be traumatic for people. And at the same time, it is a video that I think really shows the possibility of being that nonviolent presence in a situation and bringing soul force with you. And the wonderment of this situation is the gentleman who steps in, he solves this issue by, number one, being there. Number two, by eating chips. He doesn't actually say a word. And then you'll notice in the background as it's going too, there are people who are helping the woman who is in the argument with this person. And it is a physical argument. And as I said, please, if you're uncomfortable watching something like that, I would invite you to go ahead and turn off your sound right now. And maybe look away from the screen if that's what you need to do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start this in 5 seconds just to give everybody an opportunity. Okay.
Whoa, 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 whoa. On your merry way.
Don't fucking follow me, stupid shit. No, you. On your merry way. No, you. Don't hit her.
And we see that.
Don't follow me, stupid son of a bitch. Do not follow me. No, please go. No. Stop happening. You're not gonna hit a woman. Not follow me.
Already so many times.
Okay, do not follow me. Okay, ma'am. No. You need to stop following me. So get on another car. When this train stops, do not follow me no more. Do not follow me. Okay, she's told you. Follow me.
We got you on camera. Don't follow.
Do not follow me.
We got you.
When we stop again, get off.
We recognize that the person who stepped in that moment actually he was calm. He brought himself in there. He just was eating his chips. He wasn't actually physically or verbally engaged with either person, but he was 100% there. He was in that situation and he was stopping violence from happening. Oh no, I'm sorry you couldn't hear me when the video was playing. I just read that, and I was giving a play-by-play of what you were seeing. And so there really wasn't, I turned the sound off on the video because I didn't want, there's a lot of cuss words in it, honestly, and I didn't necessarily want that to go out over our screen. But you all did see what happened, and the point being that the gentleman who stepped in did so without engaging anybody, actually. He just stepped in between the two people that were going at it. And the likelihood is that he may have really saved some big damage from happening and increased violence from happening, because he was willing to use his soul force and to step into a situation to help two people who really needed it. And I say two people. The woman and the man, neither one of them actually wanted to be in that situation. Being kicked and being hit is not something that we as people enjoy. So, but they were caught up into their situation, and in all likelihood, both of them were in the fight or flight and decided to fight. And by him stepping in, you'll notice it gave them an opportunity, especially we see more the picture of the man, but it gave him an opportunity to actually step back, stop what he was doing, and take that breath. It's important to understand. It's important to understand that he didn't want what was going on, and she didn't want what's going on. Okay, and that's what we get to do when we common center ourselves. Then we get to bring that peace into the situation. Veronica or Rivera, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I am so glad to actually hear the sound on that video, which I hadn't before, because what I heard and noticed in this watching is how active other people were in this scene as well. For me, it was very empowering to think I could just stand there and eat a bag of chips, but I also heard some very skillful intervention by the woman who ultimately at the end steps into the camera frame. But then also the camera holder himself says, I'm using this, we have it on video as a deterrent to what's going on. So I'm noticing that in this situation, we actually had a whole team of people doing different aspects to de-escalate it. Very powerful. Veronica?
Yes, what I was struck by was this thing that we have more power than we think. And, here is this person, just with his presence, he kind of diffuses the whole thing. And we could be doing this all the time, but it kind of like our education, our conditioning and everything else says that we have to kind of like do all these things, but all we really have to do is be present. And then we will know instinctively what to do. This guy, something in him knew instinctively what to do because he was in presence. My guess, I'm making a lot of assumptions, but it was incredible to see just the presence. He wasn't thinking, oh my God, they might hit me. Oh my God, like I'm in danger. He just did something very effective.
And he was actually interviewed by several news stations. So you do, if you look it up on YouTube, I just look up guy eating chips stops fight. If you look up some combination of those words, you actually get to see his side of it and how he was perceiving the situation and why he made the decision to get in there. It's actually a really wonderful story.
Could you give us a tip of the story? Because so how did he come to this decision? Just a little bit of what he said would be useful, I think.
It was in his nature. He saw something that shouldn't be happening and decided right there immediately and for him, it was a reaction and a response, which it's kind of wonderful that he responded in the way that he reacted as well. And it is really worth looking it up and watching the full interview.
Adam, there's a question that came in the chat box that I think is very, very worthy to bring up, and then just to let people know that we will be actually addressing it. One person asked, how can we evaluate our own safety in moments where we need to de-escalate? Do gender and other forms of privilege play a role in what roles we take on, are safe to take on in de-escalation? And I know you have a section coming up about different methods of de-escalation, and maybe that's something you can address there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And that said, I do want to add that the one thing that we are always going to bring with us is who we are. And so in any situation we choose to get ourselves involved in that involves other people, whether we know them or we don't know them, is our identities and who we are is for ourselves, but also who we are perceived as. So when we're intervening or coming into a situation where we don't know the people, for example, they're getting their entire picture of us by what they're seeing. And then by what we're sharing or what we're saying. So it is important that we recognize, we do have privilege or we don't have privilege in that situation. We are a male or we're not a female, or we are a female, or, so who we're bringing into the situation does change the dynamic. And I want to share just a really quick story about that. The most powerful thing I ever saw in my entire life of being a peacekeeper was there was this big burly guy, his name's Tiny, and he's with the Proud Boys up here in Portland, Vancouver area. And I watched this little lady, she had to have been about 70 years old, take him and have a conversation with him. He was angry and wanting to fight. And this little lady came up to him and kept him busy for literally the entire event that was going on. It was an immigrant and refugee event. And it was the most powerful thing I've ever seen, because I had tried to de-escalate him earlier in the day. And he just wasn't having that. But he sat there and listened to this lady for almost an hour and a half. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. So, who we are and who we're bringing into the situation, we need to be thinking about those things, absolutely.
So that was a very full hour, and we've absorbed a lot. And Veronica, I'm hoping you can recenter us, and then we'll take another little break to practice some nonviolence and have a special invitation for that break. But please, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Rivera. We've been talking a lot about personal, interpersonal, and social global. So I want to lead you through a little, it's blessing ourselves, blessing the other, and blessing the world, kind of a little practice. Yeah. So just be present. When I say I mean you. I mean you, the listener. When I say you, just think of somebody you want to send a powerful well-wishing to. And when I say we, think of the whole world. Okay? So close your eyes. Drop into your soul force, into your truth. May I dwell in the heart. May I be healed. May I be full of love. May I be free from suffering. May I be joyful and free. May I be at peace and discover the utter radiance of my own true nature. Think of someone you want to blessed. Be very present to that person. May you dwell in the heart. May you be healed. May you be full of love. May you be free from suffering. May you be joyful and free. May you be at peace and discover the utter radiance of your own true nature. And let's think of the world, of all the people that need our love, our compassion. May all beings dwell in the heart. May all beings be healed. May all beings be full of love. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be joyful and free. May all beings be at peace and discover the utter radiance of their own true nature.
Thank you, Veronica. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and I invite you to actually spend some time getting your water, getting your bathroom, whatever you need, practicing those forms of nonviolence to yourself. But another form of nonviolence is also reflection. And perhaps take a few minutes, 2 minutes maybe, to do a quick write of your thoughts and your feelings, things that got stirred up. Just jot it down on a piece of paper to revisit later if you feel like. When we come back, I'll do a little bit of stretching with us. These are things that you can practice on Zoom to keep yourself awake. Thank you all. Take 5.
So Rivera?
We are still streaming, just so you know.
No, I was just saying that I have all the courses and stuff like that that I will announce. I have printed them. So no worries. I have them in front of me.
Ah, excellent. Perfect. I'm going to step off just for a moment, but I'll be back shortly.
Okay, me too.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for really committing to this precious time together. The chances to learn these skills from and with one another are relatively rare in our world. So thank you for setting aside this time and staying with it with the presence and the focus. So I just want you to take a moment and stretch your arms above your head as high as you can reach. Feel that in your spine. Notice how you might want to arch your ribs or arch your back forward like a cat. Now take your arms and stretch them to the side. Maybe you can't see my hand, but turn a light bulb on the end. Right, do both arms. Maybe rotate your shoulders. Go one way and go the other way. Take your hands and rub them together. And just rub it across your face. You rub your temples, tap the top of your head. Maybe take your feet, you can't see my feet, but go like this on the floor. These are all stealth maneuvers you can do when on long Zoom calls at your workplace. Maybe you can roll your hips. You can't see my hips, but imagine you have a hula hoop on your chair. Go one way and then the other. And then do something very special for yourself. Move the way that you want to move in your body right now. Notice what your body wants, not what my body's telling you you should do, right? Maybe it's stillness. Maybe you just want to make a face, right? Maybe you want to make a sound. That's okay, you're on mute. You can make any sound you want. And then when you come to stillness again, just notice how you feel now. Are your eyes a little bit more open? You feel a little bit more awake? These are things that you can do to practice nonviolence towards this beautiful, beloved body that you are in. That is a gift. It is the vessel that carries you from one end of life to another. And it's not really designed to sit in front of a computer all day. It's not really evolutionarily built that way. So the more we can do to practice compassionate, nonviolent stretching or moving, the better. Now, I can't see you, so I'm just imagining that some of you are out there doing little dances because it's fun, and that's totally okay. So in our next section, this is moving into the street, taking a lot of what we've talked about and starting to apply it. And so Adam and Veronica, is there anything we need to say or do before I launch into the slideshow? No, we're good.
Longing to see your slideshow.
Oh, me too. It's a great one. So there's been a lot of focus on street actions. And of course, there's over 300 different methods of nonviolent action. And I will share a link in the chat box for you all after this. But there are more than just protests in the street, more than just marches. And if we know about them, we can design actions that are not only powerful and effective, but we can also help maintain nonviolent discipline for ourselves, for our co-protesters, or our fellow protesters, and even possibly de-escalate bystanders, counter-protesters, or police. So there's no 100% guarantees, but here are some things we've learned from movements around the world that can help us in this work. I'm going to share my screen. The first thing that we can do is bring the music. Music has amazing power, not only in our hearts, but also to calm us down, even when it's very energetic music. This is a photo from Chile. Recently, Chile has been in the grips of massive nonviolent uprising, mostly nonviolent, I would say. And what they are doing is they are having 1,000-person sing-alongs of folk songs by Victor Jara, who is a folk singer who was killed by the Pinochet regime and became an enduring symbol of democracy and the effort for freedom and justice. So they're invoking that tradition even as they push to change the very constitution that came in Pinochet's regime and change it to something that is more reflective of the populace's needs now. Perhaps like me, however, you are not so great at playing the guitar or even singing. So here is a tactic that any of us can do, most of us can do. This is a cacerolazo, a pots and pan banging protest. And this one happens to be in Colombia, but they've happened all over the world. Maybe you've been a part of one. And I just want you to know that one of the cool things about cacerolazos is that when the police get repressive and when the tear gas comes out and when the rubber bullets start flying, you can not just fill the streets, you can empty the streets. And a cacerolazo can be done from your apartment windows, your rooftops, your balconies. You can do it on live streams. This has all been done around the world. In fact, Chile used a apartment building cacerolazo that swept the entire city to start to protest Pinochet during the end of the dictator's rule. Creativity is key to successful de-escalatory protests. This happens to be Civil Disobedience by Extinction Rebellion in Australia, and they are dancing for climate justice with a flash mob that actually is to the tune of Staying Alive, you know, ooh, 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 staying alive, staying alive. Amazing. I'll try to pack down the video for you. Dance is a powerful tool in the street and has been used in African communities, in Latin American and South American communities, often with special rituals that have meaning in the culture. However, silence and stillness can also be very powerful. This is a living statue. These are actually people with gold paint in their hair and on their faces, frozen on this pedestal and demonstrating against Trump's reopening plan. Silence and stillness can be as effective as sound and motion. But it's not just what you do, it's sometimes where you do it can help your protest be not just powerful, but effective. This is during the Shell No campaign in Portland, Oregon. There was a part of it that happened in Seattle, if you're more familiar with that part. And this is when a drilling rig was trying to go down the river, into the sea, up to the Arctic Circle to do exploratory drilling. And it wouldn't have done much good to hold a protest in the street. You know why? Because that rig was on the water. So what they're doing is they're holding a protest on the bridge, which kept the bridge from opening. They have this banner, and if you look below "None Shall Pass," you'll see 3 black dots. Those are actually people suspended, so the bridge cannot open while they're hanging there. Below them, you have the kayaktivists blockading the waterways, so the rig can actually not pass. Ultimately, the rig did pass, but it was delayed for so much time that the investors got nervous, and ultimately, even though that rig got to the Arctic Circle, the whole project was canceled. On the other hand, you might not go to the boat, you might make the boat go to you. This is Extinction Rebellion in the UK blockading a street with a boat because there actually weren't any laws about blockading streets with boats because nobody had ever really done it before. But now they do have laws, unfortunately, because they said, please don't block our streets anymore. It also helped catch the media attention, which can really boost your cause. So we often think protests need to be large groups, but small groups can also embody Soul Horse in powerful, powerful ways. This is Bree Newsom engaged in direct action to take down the Confederate flag from the South Carolina Capitol building. And there are literally 3 people involved in this action: Bree Newsom, a safety person, and someone who took this photo. Very powerful symbolic action. So when you think that your protest might be very heated and contentious, consider if there's actions you can do that aren't concentrated, but rather dispersed. And if there are things that small groups of people versus large numbers of people in street protests could accomplish that would be equally powerful and perhaps through creativity be even more eye-catching and symbolic. Another thing that can really help de-escalate ourselves and our fellow demonstrators and even the other people around us is to invoke the sacred and include the spirit, to bring in ritual, to engage faith. Now, Standing Rock got a lot of headlines for the brutal repression of the police, but there are so many other scenes that never made it to our media cycle where Indigenous-led ceremony de-escalated rising conflicts and tensions. This is something that people use around the world and is something to consider as you think about organizing protests, that invoking reverence, invoking the sacred can hold us to our soul force and can hold us to our common humanity and can carry us through even in the most challenging of circumstances. On the other hand, irreverence might be a very helpful tool. This is the insurgent clandestine rebel clown army. I hope I got all of their names in the right order. And what these people do is they actually train in clowning so that they can go break up tension in protests, and especially in regards to police repression, that they can actually help to de-escalate the police. They can help to put the police's tendency to be very aggressive in a whole other light and context. Sometimes remembering that we want to include our whole community at a protest can be de-escalatory from the start. Bringing the kids is actually a very powerful approach. These are my friends in Backbone Campaign who organized a children's march to tell the banks to divest in Washington. And if you notice in this picture, they're actually using a number of tactics. The kids aren't just holding small signs. They have a drum brigade. They have it looks like a 7-kid long banner. There is a giant banner on the side that has their protest slogan. And of course, they're carrying that enormous giant earth. This is the single most powerful protest that I know of that galvanized and sparked an immense movement. And this is an art installation, No Kids in Cages, that actually triggered the entire broadening nationwide awareness that we need to stop detaining kids and separating them from their family with our broken immigration system. This is a protest that is very powerful and also very not likely to erupt into traditional forms of violence, while it still gets to expose the violence that is structural and systemic. I'm going to share a personal story to conclude about why thinking through every element of your protest can help keep your people safe from our own violence that might break out or from what might be happening around you. This is in 2015, I believe, might be 16, when Israel was bombing Gaza. We decided to remake Picasso's famous painting of Guernica with scenes that were coming out of Gaza at the time. And that's what the figures on the giant banner are. If you see that banner, it's 14 feet long and about 10 feet tall. It was immense. But we all wore black to mourn the deaths that were happening, and we painted our hands red to show that we as US citizens who are funding the very weapons that are causing this destruction have blood on our hands. This took place at our downtown farmers market in Taos, New Mexico, and usually our protests here are very calm, they're very quiet, nothing happens really, lots of people honk horns in support. Not so with this protest. We had people, shop owners who came out screaming epithets at us, who called the cops on us. We had so many people who were right up in our faces angry with us over this. And I had one particular member of this protest who did not want to commit to nonviolence and in fact told me that they would not. And so I said to this person, we need someone to bang the drum. Can you bang the drum? because we are going to process in silence in this long line down through the farmer's market. And at the edge, the corner of the farmer's market, we're going to slowly lift our hands up over our heads. And then we're going to slowly lower them again. Can you keep the time for us while we do this? So she said yes, and she banged that drum, boom, boom, boom. And what happened was, because we had a choreography and then purpose and intention in which to pour our soul force, and she had a way to express her anger and her outrage. When the people in the farmers market started shouting at us, we were all, frankly, too busy to shout back, too busy to get into fistfights, too busy to get into altercations. This is an example of how you can use creative design for nonviolent actions to not only get your point across, but to make sure that you can maintain the nonviolent discipline that is so essential to successful protests, in my opinion. Thank you. We're going to now talk a little bit more about things you can do on the ground to help maintain that. One last short point here is just to reflect on those photos and notice that they're from all over the world. There are all kinds of people doing these, that this kind of work can be done by all of us, and that we can learn from people around the world and how that they are doing this work. And if you have some usual suspects that you always learn the stories of, get outside your usual suspects. Look what people are doing in Latin America, South America. Africa is the hotbed of nonviolent action right now. Think about what people are doing in Asia and China and Australia. Think what people are doing in communities that don't look like you. Even maybe dig into stories of what your community has done in the past that you're not so aware of. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to go from here.
Adam, it's your call. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you, Rivera. That was very enlightening, and I appreciate that. And so as I was watching those wonderful movements go by, I was looking at all the people in the background who were both supporting and there to help the message get out. And what I want to talk to everybody about now is how we can do that in ways that create safety for the entire group. And the best way to do that is through de-escalating issues that come up or things that we're witnessing around us. If it's escalating into violence or into unplanned damages to things, we need to have a way to de-escalate those situations so that the movement continues to look good or the event stays safe for those who are involved. And the best way to do that is through de-escalation. But not all of us are prepared to step up and deal with people directly who might be causing the issues. So what I really want to talk about right now is the other ways that we can be effective helpers when situations arise or things come up that we don't feel comfortable directly intervening in ourselves. And there are other ways to be helpful, and they're called the 3 Ds. We've discussed a little bit about the first D, which is directly involving yourself in the situation and trying to help them resolve it and bringing peace to that situation yourself. But when we're not comfortable doing that, there's 2 other Ds that I want to share with you today. And the first is delegation. Usually when we're in groups like this, if we're not comfortable ourselves to step in and say, hey, you know, can we not do this? Or to talk to somebody and take them out of the situation so that their focus is on us, we can ask somebody else to step into that role and say, for example, I was on the bus, this was a couple weeks ago, I was on the bus and there were 2 young ladies who had gotten into an altercation and they were fighting. And I, as speaking of who I am and who I'm bringing into that situation, I didn't feel comfortable being the one to step in. Luckily, I was with another peace team member. And I asked her, I said, would you be comfortable, you go in and I'll back you up from behind. So I asked her to go in and deal with the situation rather than me being the one to step up. The reason I asked her is because her stop was the next one. So she actually stayed on the train with me, and we went and actually were able to help these people, and it didn't get to violence. So through our delegation to others, asking them to help, and usually when we're in a movement or we're at an event, we might not know everybody. We might just be there ourselves supporting. So it's always a good idea when you get to the event or you're marching, to get to know somebody else or a couple people around there if you're uncomfortable and you're not somebody who wants to get direct, so that you get to know some other people. So maybe you can ask them to help. And one of the things that we know in our field is that everybody expects that somebody else is going to take care of whatever issue is happening. And the truth is, most often everybody's thinking that very thing, so nobody steps in. And that can be problematic because the situation, it'll further escalate if nobody is willing to step in. So recognizing that maybe in the entire group, you might be the only one to say, hey, something's going on over there that doesn't look right, or that doesn't feel right. Would you come over and check that out with me? That can really stop something bad from happening and keep the movement looking good at the same time. The next way, the third D, is through distraction. And distraction is taking a situation that's brewing over here and distracting the people who are involved in that. Usually it's the person who's escalating, distracting them to the point where their focus is on you instead of wherever their target was or whatever they were going to do. And I have a really wonderful story about this. We have a guy on our peace team. He's an older gentleman, and he was on the bus and they were going down the street, and this man was about to physically abuse this woman, who I think was his girlfriend, and Pat faked a heart attack. He grabbed his chest and he, oh, I can't breathe. And he took the situation that was escalating over here to the point that the person who was actually targeting that young lady, that person asked, what do you need? Shall I call the hospital? Or shall I call the ambulance? So it totally took a situation that was definitely, he said, leading towards violence, and brought the attention to him. So he was able to distract and help that situation. There's another example of where this has been helpful. There was a big party at the college, and there were two people who had decided that they really liked each other, and they had been drinking, and one of the person's friends recognized that it wasn't a good idea for them to go up stairs together. And very quick acting, this person ran up and said, hey, your car is getting towed. We got to go get it. And so the person turned around, my car, and of course it wasn't being towed, but by the time they got down to where the car was, it was no longer an issue, and they went about their separate ways. So there are lots of things that we can do without directly involving ourselves in whatever the situation is. And I'm sure that there are other examples. Veronica or Rivera, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think this was pretty kind of comprehensive. And I think the important thing is always to remember to think out of the box, to be creative, Jean Goss used to say the three principles of nonviolence are that it is liberating, democratic, and creative. Liberating, democratic, and creative. So hold on to these three words, and think around those. But as you keep saying all the time, the most important thing is to to be able to do that process where we can take a decision. Yeah.
Thank you, Veronica.
I would love to circle back to one of the questions that came in, which is about the gender and other varying forms of privilege. That's a very complex equation, and you very wonderfully ask people to question and think about that for themselves in the bodies that we live in. But I would say that one thing that I realized during a training in de-escalation in these 3Ds and a few other tools in the toolbox is that sometimes the privilege, where we fall on the privilege ladder, let's say, actually can be inverted in terms of de-escalation. And we might assume that we're the most vulnerable, but we also sometimes might have some of the most effectiveness, as your story about the little lady explained. But what I discovered when I was de-escalating someone who's very angry is that actually my gender turned out to be a boon in that situation. It was very powerful. Also, humor was a very powerful tactic. Being very calm, lowering your voice so that someone has to listen more to hear what you're saying. But these are counterintuitive to the ways that particularly our culture of violence here in the US trains us to think about how we're supposed to respond to conflict. If we watch like Marvel movies, you know, your violence is supposed to save you. But the reality on the street is that our violence isn't what saves us. And it often is what can get us even more in trouble.
That's a great point, Rivera. Thank you. And also recognizing that when we're bringing ourselves into a situation, there is the possibility that the people we're wanting to help don't want us and don't want our help to be there. And we have to honor and respect, especially if somebody's being targeted by another person. And we're not part of that situation. So we have to be very respectful of the person who's being targeted. And we have to ask them, would you like some help? I noticed what's going on here. Would you like to go grab some coffee with me and you know, do something to allow them to make the decision? Because what's going on is they have a person over here who's targeting them for no apparent reason, and we want them to have autonomy. We want them to decide what they want to do with their bodies, or how they want us to help, or if they want us to help, because the reality might be they don't. And so in that instance, we can step back and just monitor. We don't leave the situation if somebody's, you know, but we can step back and just monitor and make sure that person safely gets out of that situation. And the other thing I wanted to say about who we are, especially in America, quite often when there's something going on, it's the person who's agitating, it's the person who's escalating that most people are focused on, and they're going to solve that problem. When in reality, safety says, you know what, help the person who's being targeted, because you don't know what the person who's doing the targeting is going to do, but you can help the person who's being targeted much more safely than confronting or bringing anything to the person who, especially if you don't have the de-escalation skills already practiced and already, you know, at your disposal. It's better to deal with the person who's being targeted. It's safer for you and it's safer for them, frankly.
Adam, there's a lot of questions coming in the chat box, and I'm not sure we're going to actually get to address them all right now, but we have a little time coming up. I want you to explain Clara, which is a useful tool for one of the questions that was asked was, what is a practical thing we can do, another practical tool? But can you repeat the 3 Ds, just just list them?
Absolutely. So being direct, which means directly involving yourself. Delegating to somebody else. If you're not comfortable, at least let somebody else know something's going on and that you'll be there to watch their back, perhaps. And then there's also distraction, actually distracting them from whatever their goal is. And there's lots of ways to do that. I've heard of people dumping their pop on themselves. Oh, I'm so clumsy. I can't believe I did that. And yeah, you got a mess all over you, but you also save somebody from getting punched in the face, or maybe something even worse happening. So there's lots of ways to use these three effectively. And you have to practice. It's not something I can just say, okay, these are the things that you do. And in the moment, you use something. You practice it with your friends, practice it with your family. Hey, did this work? Does this work? When I distract in this way, what did you think about that? Was that effective? And then working together and practicing those skills is essential.
What about role plays, Adam? That's a question that came up. Do you use role plays in the Portland Peace Team?
Absolutely. In fact, our trainings typically, we're doing online stuff now, but when we're in our in-person trainings, half of it is the theoretical, and the other half is actually practicing all the skills that I'm actually going to be talking about here in just a second. It's the practice that gives you the ability to have it. You have muscle memory when you practice things and practice things. Your brain goes to that point or to that idea right away. And that's what you're hoping for if you want to be somebody who intervenes in violence, or you want to be somebody who is supportive of your community who quite frankly are being targeted. If you want to be the person that steps into that and helps those people, you have to practice those skills.
So Adam, somebody asked, sorry, Rivera, somebody asked me to repeat the 3 points from Jean Goss. And he says that nonviolence is liberating because it liberates everybody. It's democratic because everybody can participate. And it's creative because it takes you out of the box. You have to expand your consciousness to say it in a certain way in order to act creatively, which is everything that we have been addressing today.
Thank you. And so we're going to be moving on to, it's a small CLARA training. And what CLARA is, it's the method of de-escalation that we use on the Portland Peace Team. And it's also a big part of bystander intervention. We spent quite a bit of time in the second hour and part of the first hour talking about calming and centering ourselves. And that's actually the first C in CLARA. CLARA stands for calming and centering. And we went ahead and put it in the chat. Ryan put it in the chat so that you can download it and go to the website and actually have that information at your fingertips. But CLARA's, the C stands for calming and centering. The L stands for listening. And we're going to talk a little bit about active listening and what that means. And then the A is affirming. And then if you've done those first 3 parts, if you've done the CLA correctly, most often you don't have to get to the R, which is the response, or the second A, which is adding information. Because the person usually, when you get to the affirmation and they feel heard, they go from this escalated level to a reasonable level where you can actually converse with them and have a conversation, or move on to the next person who might be escalated. So we did talk quite a bit about calming and centering. So I really want to get on, because we're kind of short on time, I want to get on to the L, which is active listening. The C, you're bringing yourself, you're bringing peace into the situation. The L, the active listening portion, you're actually giving them the ability to share with you what it is that's going on for them. And typically, what a lot of people do is they listen to respond. So quite often, this person's yelling, they're upset, and they take a breath, and then the person is going in with what they have to say, never having actually heard what the other person was saying, and more importantly, never understanding what was behind those words. What emotions are there? What fears are there? What's going on for them? So when I talk about active listening, a lot of people maybe don't know what that looks like. So I want to cover some of the ways we know that that people are hearing us, or that we are being heard. And eye contact is a major function of that. If somebody's talking to you and you're all like this, they're not going to feel heard. Also, if you have your arms crossed like this, they're not going to feel like you're listening to them. They're feeling blocked. They're feeling like you're not. So being open, maybe putting your hands out like this. On the Portland Peace Team, we always stand like this, so that they know that we're listening to them and we don't have anything in our hands that's, you know, that could be dangerous for them. The other ways is leaning in to the conversation, talking to them when they tell us something, maybe paraphrasing that and saying, did I understand you right when you said, and adding that to the conversation, and then being open and receptive to the fact that they might say, no, you didn't get that at all. Oh, okay, well, can you explain that to me better? Because I really do want to understand what you have to say. And I want to know what's going on for you. You know, you're here, you're angry, and there's a reason for that. And I want to know why. Why do we want to do this? Because that allows the person to de-escalate, allows us to help them de-escalate, and it keeps what we're doing around us, it keeps the people around us safe, right? And Rivera or Veronica, can you think of any other things that allow people to know that they're being heard, or things people are doing for you that allow you to know you're being heard?
I know that I am being heard when people really look into my face. And they're not kind of like, you can feel when a person is caught up in their own thoughts and they're just waiting for you to finish. You know, it is a feeling. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, having someone affirm, and I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about the difference between affirming and agreeing, because I have trouble agreeing when somebody is spewing racist nonsense or is really upset about something and saying things that I think are very discriminatory or derogatory, or I could never agree with in a million years. So what do I do about that? How is affirming different than saying, oh yeah, you're totally right, I get you?
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that part in just one quick second. The affirmation part is very important. I just want to make sure we're clear on the point of how we know that we're actively listening. And this is also something that I want to put out there, that this is not a norm for a lot of people. So it's something we have to practice as well. And how do we practice that? Well, we practice it every day with every conversation that we have with every single person we deal with. And when we're able to do that and practice it in those ways, we find that we actually miss quite a bit of what's said to us as we're preparing to respond. And then once people feel genuinely heard, their defenses go down and they're more apt to want to talk more with you, which is the essential to creating change. If we understand each other better, then we're able to create change together. And then I do want to move on to the A, which is affirmation. We can affirm people without agreeing with them, because we can look at people and say, okay, after having chatted with you, I understand why you feel that way. That makes sense to me that you feel that way. You don't have to say, I agree with what you're saying, or you are right. You can just say, wow, you really seem to love your country. And then let them talk about that, you know, or whatever it is that they've said to you, whatever you can grab onto that makes sense to why they would feel that way or why they're thinking in those terms.
Yeah, great. So Adam, you froze a little bit. I'm not sure if that's true on everyone's end.
You can talk
you
about
froze for a bit,
without
Adam.
having to agree with their stance. Could you hear me or no?
You did freeze for a moment. Can you just back up maybe 3 or 4 sentences?
Okay, I was just saying that you don't have to agree with people to affirm them. That was the primary point, and you can agree with what they believe without believing what they believe. and letting them know, I understand that you love America, or whatever it is that the conversation you've had, whatever that conversation is, taking one piece of that and letting them know that you understand they feel that way because of what they've told you. And that's the affirmation piece of it. And then I'll just briefly go over the response and the adding information. When you respond to them, you want to respond in a way that's not going to further escalate the situation, because the goal is to keep everybody safe, especially if you're a peacekeeper. But in any situation that you're in, the goal is to keep everybody safe and also keep the situation, the movement or the march, or to keep that stuff going on and uninterrupted by whoever might be trying to interrupt it. If you can have a conversation with them and they're talking with you instead of yelling at the speakers or whatever, it just gives the march a better opportunity to get the message across. And so responding in ways that don't elevate them again, like you don't necessarily have to disagree with them. You can disagree with their points without being in their face about it, I guess is the best way to put it. And then adding information, whatever they've told you, if you have special information about that, like for example, they're talking about something that you disagree with, but you know a little information about that, sharing that at the end after they're already de-escalated would be the time to do that. And you wouldn't, most people start there. Somebody says X, Y, or Z, and you have A, B, and C to go against that. But they're more able and ready to listen after you've gotten through the C, L, A, R, and then go ahead and put that information in, because they're going to be more receptive to it. And what I'm sharing with you right now is an 8-hour training, condensed into this very, very short time that we had. But I went ahead and put that link in there. And again, this is something that I'm hoping you will practice. And we will be doing further webinars on this information if this is something you're interested in, so that we can actually practice and really get in depth into the Clara method.
Thank you so much, Adam. There are so many questions coming in, but I think what I'm going to do is say, those are all perfect questions to bring to your August 25th training, where you might have time to get into these details, when to use it on the phone, when to use it in the street, what if this happens, what if that happens. And thank you all for your interest in this subject. We feel this is such an important skill in the culture of nonviolence. And I'm just going to invite Veronica to share a little bit about the other classes and how you can go further that are coming up. Over to you, Madam Director of Education.
Thank you so much. So basically tomorrow you will learn a lot. For those who come to the conference tomorrow, there's a lot of the things we touched in today that I'm sure people will touch into tomorrow. And yes, so these are the trainings that are coming. There is a training, Applying Meditation for Nonviolent Living, starting on August 13th, next Thursday. I am the facilitator. I think there's 6 places left in that. Then there is Nonviolence in Action, Planning and Strategy. That's on August 18, given by Rivera. It's a 2-hour thing. Active Bystander Training, Tuesday, August 21st, and that's by Portland Peace Team's trainer, Adam Vogal, yours faithfully. Then there is Practical Tools to Prepare for Street Demonstrations, that's September 8th with Jerry Monroe Maynard. Then there's Rivera and I, we're doing a 6-week course in collaboration with the Sisters of Mercy, and that is going to start the 10th of September. We will offer more strategy and active bystander trainings in September, but the dates are still to be assigned. For all this information, it's going to be up next week. You can go to our website. And then Jean McInerney from New Zealand is on October 9th offering a 2-hour on nonviolent communication for social change and introduction. And then in mid-October, we are offering 3 courses, nonviolence and community training. In mid-October, we are offering 3 different days, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with different people, Rivera, myself, Patty, and Robert. So all of that is going to be up on our website. So worry not, there's always going to be a spot for whatever you're interested in. And, you know, we will meet the demand. Whatever it is, we'll find a way to meet the demand. So just let us know what you need, what you want. And we are here. Our name is Pace e Bene Nonviolent Service. And this is what we want. We want to serve. And at this moment, I think it is our privilege, and it is like what the world needs, because otherwise we wouldn't have all these people simply kind of asking for trainings and coming to a conference. And yeah, the world is ready for us all. So that's it. Rivera, anything else you would like?
Yes, just a couple little notes. One is that Pace e Bene is Italian for peace and all good, in case you, like me, didn't know that. And then also, many of you are asking, can we post the trainings? Can we send an email? You are on Pace Bene's email list, and you will get notified about these. They are also on the events page, some of them, which is in the chat box now. And thank you. We're so excited you're excited. We're excited. And I just want to invite my co-facilitators, Veronica and Adam, to share any closing thoughts that you might be holding on why is this kind of training so important? Why is this knowledge that we've shared today so important? Veronica, you just touched on this is a burning need in our world. But what is this burning that's going on? And then also, how is that connected to this exploding movement for nonviolence, which is so unexpected and so happening?
I'm going to make it short and sweet. If you read anything from Gandhi, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Bernard Lafayette, education is fundamental. It's how you get to grow, is when something comes into your space that was not there before, and therefore you begin to expand. So the importance of education is fundamental. And unless we know something exists, we cannot even work with it. So we have to know what nonviolence is, what it can do, how it can help others. You know, like what we most want in life, most of us, is meaning, belonging, and to love and be loved. And I think that this gives us all of that, those things that we so cherish and love, you know, like meaning, belonging, and to love and be loved. And so, yeah, so welcome on board. That's what I have to say. Adam?
I'm also going to be short and sweet. True change, true nonviolent change only comes if you're helping. And so having events like this and coming to events like this is essential to creating the change that we all deserve, because each of us deserves a better situation than we find ourselves in right now. And that's not going to change unless each of us are willing to step in and become community and become a force for change. And that's what we get to do in these trainings. We're hopefully saving one another and encouraging one another and showing empathy for one another and doing all the things that our society needs to be doing. We're starting here, and it's just going to spread out.
Yeah, and on that line, I would like to ask Rivera, do you have anything else to say? Otherwise, I'm closing with a quote from Gandhi. Rivera?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from my vantage point where I sit, we are told this, that we live in this incredibly violent culture, that violence is on the rise, it's happening all over. But the untold story is that nonviolence is on the rise. Nonviolence is happening. There are over 1,000 participants participating in the events of this conference. And it is starting tomorrow morning, bright and early. Veronica, maybe you know the time off the top of your head. I think it's
9 o'clock Pacific.
There you go, 9 o'clock Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern time. And our speakers are another amazing group of people. Veronica will speak, but also Kazu Haga and Daniel Hunter and Sherry Mitchell and Henry Cervantes and Erica Chenoweth and Richard Rohr, and I could go on because there's actually so many amazing people. It is, in my opinion, the most incredible nonviolence conference that has been put together to date. I'm a little partial, but yes, so please do come and recognize that today, tomorrow, and onward, you are part of this the most remarkable achievement of humankind to date. It's not going to the moon. It's not making the atom bomb for sure. It is developing the skills, the practices, and the actions, the strategies and philosophies and way of life of nonviolence. Veronica, close us up.
Yes.
Open us up, close us up.
Yes. Go to your heart. Wake up. So hear what Gandhi has to say. My optimism rests on my belief in the infinite possibilities of the individual to develop nonviolence. The more you develop it in your own being, the more infectious it becomes, till it overwhelms your surroundings and by might oversweep the world. How's that for an optimistic ending? My optimism, he said, so is ours. So is ours, our optimism. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. We are so grateful. Hand in the heart.